Good day, listeners. I am Nisham, and this is World's Creative Identities. At each episode, I'm having conversations with people who are passionate about human communication, whether it's about expressing their own true selves, helping others, or organizations do so. Journalists, documentary makers, therapists, designers, and so many other types of creative empaths who are able to celebrate who we are and can be. Today, I'm excited to be with Katie Vanhoutte. Before becoming head of strategy at one of the best branding agencies, she did peace and conflict studies, got a master's in change leadership, accompanied female entrepreneurs, had two kids, and is now applying all of these tools with her teams and clients. The more AI is developing, she believes the more we are responsible for having better human relationships. Which brings us to today's episode. Hello, Katie. How are you doing?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure
Thank
to be here.
you for being here. And I love your pink sweater.
Thank
It's
you.
giving us all the positive vibes we need for the
It's
morning.
very gray here in Paris, so I had to bring the
Wow.
color today.
You're right in Luxembourg too. So let's bring the sun through our conversation.
Definitely. I like that.
I'd love to get to know you, but before I know that, usually listeners are wanting to understand who I'm talking to, and it goes through a lot of like what you do for a living. And so maybe we can start with this. I just mentioned that you work in one of the best branding agencies. Can you tell us a bit more about your position, what you're doing, what's this business?
So I work at FutureBrand, and it's a global branding agency that's part of McCann World Group and IPG. And
Mhm,
I am part of the strategy team. I lead the strategy team in Paris.
mhm,
And basically, FutureBrand was born in the 1990s when a creative agency was brought together with a strategic consultancy. So it
mhm,
was a design studio and a strategic consultancy brought together. And so we very much have those two disciplines in a fundamental way as part of the Future Brand offer. So on the design side, they're doing everything visual to do with
mhm.
branding. So from packaging that you might see in the supermarket to logos you might see on a building as you're driving through an urban center, really everything. And then on the strategy side, we're doing a lot of upstream strategy. So we're helping um, on the corporate side, we're helping even the C-suite define their brand ambitions,
Yeah.
how their brand can help supercharge their business strategy. On the packaging side, it's quite technical. We're looking at how the branding hierarchy should appear on pack, and
Mhm,
also how the personality should come across, how to really distinguish what the pack is doing. And then we do a lot of things in between. We do a lot of pro bono, working with
mhm,
different charities to understand how to visually represent themselves, what their narrative and their storytelling should be. So I would say we partner every day with designers and with
mhm,
business leaders to understand how to tell the story visually and verbally of different brands, whether that be corporate organizations or whether that be consumer facing brands. And so every day is different. We're doing many different projects at the same time. We're a really, I would say, young and hungry group of people,
mhm.
and we have a lot of fun.
Well, that sounds amazing. It also sounds a bit like you're dressing up the world a bit, like the packagings on the road where we're going. So it's
Yep.
very connected to the everyday life and the world we live in.
Mhm.
What parts would you say are the most exciting for you in your job?
I really love working with organizations.
Hmm.
So I love working with an organization to help them sometimes sharpen their business strategy. What are they trying to do? How are they creating value for people in the
Hmm.
world, and how are they fueling their business? And then
Hmm.
understanding what that means from a branding perspective. So a lot of times it's thinking about the origins of the company and then
Hmm.
where the company is trying to go and really listening to the people that are part of the company. I feel strongly that we spend so much time at work,
Hmm.
and work has to be not only representative of the people that
Hmm.
are there, but also somehow bringing them forward. So for me, the brand is one of those ways that communicates super quickly and instantly and on a almost humanly instinctive level
Yeah.
why you're here.
Hmm.
And I think everyone working so many hours a day deserves to know that right away and to be proud of it. And
Yeah.
so I think of what we do as helping to sharpen and really tell the story of what these companies are about so that people can remember instantly why they're there. Of course, it has to be based on something really authentic. Otherwise, it doesn't
Mhm.
work. It just feels like bullshit, honestly. Um, so that's always in the back of our mind as well.
Mhm.
But when a company is genuinely trying to accomplish something and that we can help them align what they're trying to do with the story they're telling, with the visuals and images they're putting out into the world, that becomes somewhat magic. And
Mhm.
I think it can 100% increase a business's growth and also individual productivity, individual motivation.
Mhm.
And so that's probably the part that I love the most about this job.
Yeah. I think as a strategists, we really love that connection part, like trying
Hmm.
to get to the truth and then help it come out and like help it shine. Everything you're saying is also showing us, I think, how much branding is related to culture and community because they're like circles of engagement. They're like the people who created it, the people who work there, the people who will consume what's being made. And how do you balance the reality versus coaching? Because some companies already have amazing, powerful, unique, authentic truths to reveal, and others have been maybe created more based on strategic thinking. And so they're fitting a need, but maybe there isn't yet much culture. And how do you balance that role as a strategist?
Yeah, it's really difficult. I think it's from a branding perspective, I think it's more interesting to come into the latter
Mhm.
situation where there's maybe good thinking, good
Mhm.
people, but they haven't really fit everything together yet. And then it's about not just creating the foundations that are often on a PowerPoint slide that have a great story, sounds good,
Yeah.
looks good, but then trying to make that leap off the page and become experiences that people have. And
Mhm.
when it comes to culture, there are several things that we know you have to do in order to make it feel real to people and start to become embedded. And that's around really having symbols that everyone can relate to,
Mhm.
creating rituals that people can do together, having easy stories that people can connect to and retell themselves in their own way. And to make sure that everyone can experience that on their own terms and not
Mhm.
create some dogma that's creating a
Yeah.
monoculture where you have to fit in
Mhm.
order to be part of it. For me, that's the worst case scenario. The best case is to create through brand, with
Mhm.
brand as one of the levers, um, an opportunity for people to understand what their business is trying to
Mhm.
do, but also see their own unique role that they can play
Yeah.
in it on their own terms, bringing their own best and their own story, their own reality every day.
Mhm. I love it how you put it because it also allows the brand to become organic, like something
Mhm.
living and that can evolve with the people. Because we see a lot of course, it's not the same in B2C, B2B, like based on the type of organization, but we see a lot of big old brands that were very famous become rigid through time. Like, how do I adapt, improve, still remain um, in line with the time we're living in, with the generations? Like, do you work with these types of companies too? Like, how to rebrand without shocking their culture, but giving more oxygen in there? Like, do you have any
Yeah.
experience in that?
Yeah, I would say from a packaging perspective, consumer perspective, and
Hmm.
a corporate perspective, I think corporate it's harder.
Hmm.
We a couple of years ago worked on the rebranding for Sanofi, which is a
Hmm.
Uh, French headquartered pharmaceutical company that's international. And
Hmm.
they had a specific logo and story for a long time.
Hmm.
But because over time they'd grown the business by acquiring other businesses,
Hmm.
it was completely diluted and there was no one kind of single source of truth anymore.
Hmm.
Everyone was adhering to their own story and the kind of I would say traditional or um, historic legacy that was in place just didn't work anymore.
Yeah.
It wasn't true for the
Hmm.
business they were doing. Sometimes it's fantastic, and the kind of the story, the purpose that the brand had when it was first created 100 years ago still works, and it was
Hmm.
extremely future proof and timeless. It's often not the case.
Yeah.
And so there, I would say the change management aspect of rebranding becomes even more important because even if it doesn't fit anymore, even if logically and rationally
Mm-hmm.
everyone can see that it doesn't work anymore, it's just not actually right for the business, right for the people still have relationships with it. And those things are very real, and you can't dismiss them at the drop of a hat. There has to be a process. People have to be brought on board. They
Yeah.
have to be consulted. They have to be included in
Mhm.
the change. Otherwise, it won't work. And what you meet is resistance, people going back to their old ways. And sometimes, there can actually be a sense of anger or betrayal that people feel. And again, we're spending so much of our time and giving so much to our jobs
Mhm.
that we can't have that. That's
Yeah.
that's too much of a risk.
Yeah. It's belonging. Like you don't want to shock
Mhm.
who feels like something's important, like what's important to them, and without doing all those interviews, talking with people, you can't know that. And I know that you did some very interesting studies that people won't automatically guess for the job you're doing, but it fits with what you're explaining right now. Can you talk to us about a little the studies that you've done before?
Oh, yeah. Well, we do kind of all kinds of research partnering with
Mhm.
different companies, from making sure a logo is uh, visible. I always want to say the French word visible, lisible, that people can see it and
Mhm.
distinguish it. Um, Accessibility is one of the big things that we
Mhm.
are concerned about these days. But we do also a lot of upstream research
Mhm.
before we get to creating a brand platform, both internally in organizations and externally, trying
Mhm.
to understand what's happening in the context that they're in.
Mhm.
Where is their industry going? Where is the culture around them going?
Mhm.
And so it can take many, many forms. Usually it's custom, and we just find the right supplier to help us with a
Yeah.
specific thing. Really, I'm trying to think of something that we've done. I mean, we can really do ethnographic things where we follow a few people closely for several days, having them film the world around us. I really believe that doing things that are more matched closely to people's actual
Mhm.
behavior and coming with them rather than getting them into a room and doing focus groups, which I spent a lot of time in my early career doing, is
Mhm.
a much more, I would say, productive way to do research.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to ask people what they think, but I
Mhm.
typically find that those results are a lot more superficial and less trustworthy than
Mhm.
just going along with people and observing what's actually happening.
Yeah, that's it's like the empathy phase in design thinking. You
Yeah.
need to really immerse yourself and be there. It's funny because in one of the earlier episodes, we were talking with a documentary maker, and he was also explaining to us how he likes to go and spend multiple times time with the people he's going to be interviewing to
Mhm.
get to know them, to get them to their natural space, like where they're not behaving as they think they should behave. And I think in focus groups, it's similar too. Yeah, and you know about listening to people very well also because of masters you did, I think, in change leadership, and everything we're speaking about is related to change, to listening, to empathy. Can you tell us a bit about those that master's degree you have?
Yeah, it was at a point in my career where I was really wondering what to do next. I spent
Mhm.
the first part of my career working in advertising, and I just got to a point thinking, I don't know if I'm using all of the skills that I have, and I think I might want to sharpen um, my kind of coaching and consulting part of
Mhm.
what I do. And so I had heard about the master's program, which at the time was called Coaching and Consulting for Change.
Mhm.
And even the name just had me. But the more I learned about the program, I was like, oh, this seems amazing. And so I embarked upon the program. It was over 2 years. It was an executive program, and I had two kids under two at the time.
Mhm.
So it was very,
Ambitious.
very, very intense. I always do things in intense leaps and bounds. And then I am like, why did I do this to myself? But at the same time, it keeps things interesting.
Yeah.
I think the minute I stop, I get a bit bored. So I need to keep myself going. And Yeah, the course was really amazing. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It was
Mhm.
extremely academic. So a lot of reading academic papers
Mhm.
and writing essays based on your own perspective. So really the first chance that I had had after university to be forced to read so much material and give not a point of view that's destined towards a client or an
Yeah.
industry or my agency, but something that was really coming from me, I think, first of all, was a luxury and a lot of fun. And I'm so happy I got the chance to do it. But then, even the program in and of itself became sort of a vehicle for self reflection
Mhm.
and I think very difficult at times to challenge yourself and look really at who you are.
Mhm.
And I don't think a lot of master's programs are designed to do that, but this one
Mhm.
was trying to almost help you hold you as you asked a lot of difficult questions of yourself and tried to
Yeah.
get to know yourself better while also giving you skills that you can apply in the real world
Mhm.
in our jobs. And I think people came from all different places, all different types of industries, including a couple from the
Mhm.
communications world, like me. But what it taught me was some of the basics of coaching, some of the ways to stage interventions that are productive to
Mhm.
help our human interactions move in a direction that can accomplish change. So
Mhm.
it's not always pretty, it's not always nice, I would say, but it
Mhm.
definitely keeps you going. And everyone has their own style of doing it. A lot of it comes down to listening.
Yeah.
Listening is this kind of forgotten art that we aren't taught to do, I don't think, very well at school and
Mhm.
even within our families. I don't know about your family, but I have a big family and it was
Mhm.
more like how can you get your how can you get your voice above the others to be heard
Yeah.
instead of really trying to listen to each other. It's something I'm trying to do with my own kids because when you listen really intently,
Mhm.
there's so much that you can sense and that comes
Yeah.
across. It's beyond the words, but it's the
Mhm.
whole package. It's the context, it's the body language, it's the repetition, it's the certain words that are used.
Yeah.
And a lot of what I do is trying to find the connections between what people are saying and understand what they're really saying and what they
Mhm.
really want to get across.
Yeah. I also find it funny that based on what you've been eating, drinking, your listening is not the same also. Like if you just had 4 coffees and you're going into a coaching or a workshop and you're like, okay, you think you already know, like it puts you in a space of getting faster and faster. And
Hmm.
so what changed in the way you accompany your clients from between before you did this master's and after? Like what are the biggest changes you brought?
It's probably something that comes with age and experience as well, but just like assuming that I don't know
Hmm.
rather than I do know from the
Yeah.
get go. So being very confident about the expertise I have in this field,
Hmm.
but extremely open and I would say humble
Hmm.
about the expertise my client has in their field.
Hmm.
Because I'm going to, from the interactions that we have and the documents I read and all the research that I do, understand but a small slither of the business.
Yeah.
And so while I try to understand the best that I can,
Hmm.
I come into the situation ready to learn, ready to listen, and ready to help. And
Yeah.
that's really the how I come into most of the conversations I try to have with other people,
Mhm.
assuming that I don't know, assuming there are things going on in their life that
Mhm.
I'm not privy to. I don't know what they've had for breakfast this morning or if they've had it as well, how many coffees they've had, and really to follow their lead in some ways
Mhm.
while still providing a
Guidance, yeah.
steady hand and guidance.
Mhm.
Um, and in my style, it's not so much in your face. It's more of a kind of
Yeah.
a gentle influence,
Mhm.
asking questions at the right moments. I think the art of
Mhm.
asking questions at the right moment is another thing that I absolutely learned,
Yeah.
and when to shut up, when to stay quiet, and when to let people not just finish their thought,
Mhm.
but add the thing that you never would have heard if you didn't help hold yourself back.
Yeah.
And sometimes for me, that holding myself back can be difficult because I don't like silences naturally. So learning to be at ease with that
Mhm.
pause, that moment of silence is another thing that I learned that can be incredibly powerful.
And do you find it, how is it with your teams? Like, how many people are there in your team today?
We are 7 today, so it's a pretty small, we're very tight knit, very small team, but big enough to have like a pretty dynamic
Mhm.
conversation. No, my team is amazing. Really, a collection of super bright,
Mhm.
super smart, really kind people
Mhm.
who we all try to work together. We try as much as we can
Mhm.
to be at least two on projects, even if every time there's one clear leader who's
Yeah.
responsible for delivering the project. We
Mhm.
like to have duos so
Mhm.
that there's a lot of interaction and back and forth and ping ponging that can happen because that's the way that I think people learn and grow, and
Mhm.
also how we have more fun.
Mhm.
So that's pretty much what we do. We work on a project basis. So there's pitches and projects coming in all the time. We start one thing, finish one thing. So part of what I do that I don't love, but I'm
Mhm.
trying to get better at is almost the resourcing. So matching the right person to the right project, understanding when things are finishing and starting, and making sure everyone gets a taste of different kinds of projects that
Yeah.
match their development goals.
Mhm.
So now we have a half hour at the beginning of the week where it's completely logistical and tactical and operational. And we're saying, you're
Mhm.
doing this, I'm doing this. And then this used to be one meeting, and it just felt like the tactical topics were taking over.
Yeah.
So now we have a quick half hour. And then on Thursdays, we have an hour, which we call
Uh,
our working session,
what session?
where it's called our working session
A
on
working session.
Thursdays, where we
Mhm.
have an hour, and anyone can bring anything to the table.
Okay.
So it could be a project that they want help on. It
Mhm.
could be trying to do a naming brainstorm.
Mhm.
It could be, I have a topic that I'm working on for a new article. Can I workshop it with you? And can you test my point of view on this? And can we have a debate?
Mhm.
So it's really this open time, almost like office hours, where anyone can come
That's
and
cool.
discuss anything.
Mhm.
And again, I feel passionately that we are a team. We're not a bunch of freelancers.
Mhm.
That moment together should be a moment of laughing, listening, but also
Mhm.
creating
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, you're creating your own culture within the team. Uh,
Hmm.
and are these people that you hired, or were they already there when you took your job?
It's a big mix.
Okay.
So there are 3 people
Mhm.
that were here when I got here,
Mhm.
and there are 3 people that I've hired since arriving. So it's
Okay.
half and half. And yeah, it works really well. And for the past few years, it's been very stable. I know that's not going to continue forever, and it's healthy to have some change in teams as well. And so probably that will happen in the next year or so.
Yeah.
But it's been a really, really nice time just establishing these close
Mhm.
links that still let everybody be themselves, bring their specific, unique talents, but
Mhm.
also work together as much as
Mhm.
possible.
And in all these things you learned during the masters and throughout your career, like how do you feel like you're passing it on to your teams? Like, does it happen naturally because sometimes they are your due on a project and they see you do it, or do you have like training sessions?
It's a mix. I would say probably they see me interacting with clients,
Hmm.
and so I I think they probably learn. I think learning by example is one of
Hmm.
the key ways of developing your own capacity. So I
Hmm.
think they see me in how I'm interacting with clients, leaving the space, trying to always keep distance as well. There are times when I do one-on-one training as well,
Hmm.
one-on-one coaching, specifically for my direct reports, but also throughout the team.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of times when this comes out is when there's a problem.
Hmm.
And of course, there's conflict or disagreement in between teams at the agency, in between a team and a client, maybe in between people. And
Hmm.
those are opportunities to, I would say, lean into our humanity and try to learn from the interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked a lot about double loop learning. So,
Mm-hmm.
not just fixing a problem and moving on, but understanding what was at the root of the
Mm-hmm.
problem, especially with the ways of working internally.
Mm-hmm.
And we've done a lot of kind of retrospectives on projects
Mm-hmm.
that have maybe been a bit dysfunctional or even that have worked well to say,
Mm-hmm.
what made this dysfunctional? What didn't work? How
Yeah.
could we do better next time? And how could we reproduce what worked really well in this project?
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say I'm not like a professor giving courses or anything. Um, but when there are moments of turbulence or change, or when there are moments to learn, I would say I'm bringing those things out, and probably through example or osmosis, the
Mm-hmm.
team is picking up on it.
Yeah, and I think these changes are also very important in the advertising industry because there we don't always have a good reputation. Like it has been for decades the environment of creativity that went with ego and
Mhm.
no time to reflect on our own internal communication. I always found it very um, ironic that we're doing communication but not so good internally, and so it's quite exciting to hear these types of approaches. And how much of this do you think approach you have is also due to the fact that before doing this master's degree, originally you did peace studies? Like, can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with my youthful dreams of potentially being a diplomat
Mhm.
or a lawyer, an international lawyer. So I thought I was going to do one thing. I ended up doing another thing, but I have no regrets about it because I think in America, which is where I did university, you you're more encouraged to kind of follow your passions.
Mhm.
So it's why I didn't do an applied degree. I did a history degree with a concentration in peace and conflict
Mhm.
studies, which let me just basically do what I liked, which I
Mhm.
always felt a little bit maybe I should a little bit uncomfortable with because I'm like, they're really this is what I get to do. Like I
Mhm.
one of the courses I did was with the most amazing professor where I looked at the hidden women in wars,
Mhm.
the role that women have played
Mhm.
through history that has been completely covered up or at least not spotlighted or forgotten or denied in different wars. And it was just the most phenomenal experience working with her, getting supported by her. And it's one of those things that never leaves you. And those kind of lessons of understanding the dominant narrative and trying to look underneath and see what else is there, especially with marginalized communities,
Mhm.
that's been something that stuck with me. And I think that kind of, I wouldn't say forensic. I think that's being a little bit too, too nice to myself. But critical
Mhm.
eye is something that I've completely brought with me,
Mhm.
um, and and also trying to understand things that are happening from many different perspectives.
Mhm.
It's one of my weaknesses as well because sometimes I instantly see something from so
Yeah.
many perspectives that you have to kind of fish out what you actually think about it
Yeah.
and find your conviction and make sure that's clear.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you're just, constantly overwhelmed by trying to understand things from different people's shoes, which is important to
Yeah.
be empathetic. But again, part of my part of the work that I'm doing now is just making sure that what I think
Mhm.
in that like multi-dimensional context is clear
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
myself and to other people.
It's feeding your discourse with all the things you analyze and why you came to that conclusion. It's
Hmm.
yeah, it's quite a balance you're showcasing because having a team and being nice and listening, but being firm and leading, like all of these things, it's like a ballet.
Completely, completely. Yeah.
But yeah, it sounds like you really found that balance, and it's really great. You were talking about America. Did you grow up there? Like where was your childhood? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in England.
Hmm.
My dad is Irish and my mum is English. My
Okay.
mum and dad both went to boarding school extremely young. My mum because her dad was in the army, the British Army, and my dad because he was from an Irish Catholic family and this was the thing to do at that time. So they went at 7 and 8 years old, if you can imagine that. Now my kids are those ages, and I literally cannot imagine
Yeah.
sending them off. But my parents both experienced that.
Hmm.
And my mom is an artist, so she's a botanical watercolor illustrator.
Okay.
And my father always worked in the toy business in marketing. And
Okay.
now he connects toy inventors to big companies looking to develop those toys. So they're both quite creative people, I would say.
Yeah.
Creative people. And my dad's job took us when I was 8 to the Boston area. So we moved from the UK to Boston. It was
Mhm.
meant to be for 2 years, and we ended up staying until I moved to Paris. So I, yeah, spent most of my childhood in the US, early adulthood. And then when I was 26, I was given the opportunity to transfer within my company to
Mhm.
Paris. So that was supposed to be for 2 years as well. And now it's been 12. So there's a bit of a pattern of thinking something might be temporary
Yeah.
when maybe it was a story I was telling myself, and actually it was
It's
going
a
to be for quite
soothing
a while.
story. Yeah, during the change phases, I think it's nicer to tell yourself that you can always go back to what you know.
Exactly. It's only, I'm just trying it out.
Yeah, and if I like it, I can stay, but let's
Yeah.
not talk about that right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Mhm.
So yeah, that the change in my life has maybe led me to this sort of career as well. Because
Mhm.
when you, and I think you've had some similar experiences, but when you move countries and you're
Mhm.
the other, it gives
Yeah.
you a pretty good lens through which to see,
Mhm.
I would say, things in an ethnographic way, because you're experiencing
Yeah.
them for the first time. As a kid, I think I tried to assimilate as quickly as
Mhm.
possible and just, but I did have about a year where I was resisting and just wanted to go back to England and didn't
Oh,
want to be there.
yeah.
And so everything still felt foreign. And then of course you kind of accept the
Yeah.
situation and start to assimilate. So I lost my English accent
Mhm.
and, it started to feel like home, which was also
Mhm.
a good thing. But then you get a bit confused of what's actually home,
Yeah.
what's adopted home, what's home now. So those are questions that are, I would say, quite on repetition in my
Mhm.
head, and something I'm thinking about as well as I'm bringing up my own kids.
Yeah. Especially when you have people around you who fit to the boxes. Like if you're in a
Hmm.
class and they're all from there, grew up there, they don't know what you're talking about when you have these types of questions. They're all trying to ask you that question, like, where is home? And that's
Yeah.
when the first time I had the thought, because until someone was telling me, are you more Turkish, Luxembourgish, or French, or actually American? Like, I was like, I don't know. I think I'm Turkish, but then the more I started thinking about it, I was like, I never went to school there, and like it's for holidays, and here they call me the other one. So I get it. And I was also thinking when you were talking about the cultures and companies, the more we evolve, the more the world is a mixed up place, and we have multiculturality in the companies. And when you lead those workshops, trying to understand what means what to those people, like their values, what why they belong to this company, sometimes I think there are some culturally differently used words also. And
Mm.
I think people who do these types of jobs, we need to detect when, oh, this person is talking about, I don't know, responsibility, but I don't know, I'm going to be very cliche, but it's a German person, and it's not the same as a French person. Like
Yeah.
maybe a French person is going to put more poetry behind responsibility and make it a bit more like purposeful, and maybe the German person was more thinking of like factually, what are we doing? I
Hmm.
thought this was a cliche, but I'm working a lot with French and German people right now, and I'm seeing that there really is truth to these approaches. Have you had experiences where in your job you realize, whoa, wait, we're talking the same language, but we're not talking the same language?
All the time, all the time. Um, I'm trying to think of a specific example, but no, I mean, it was one of the reasons that I wanted to take the job in Paris in the first
Mhm.
place. Because being a strategist in America is really interesting because you have such a multicultural environment that it's almost like working within a multi-country,
Mhm.
um, in a multi-country context, because you
Yeah.
have so many subsegments. that
Mhm.
you cannot talk to everyone in the same way, and you have to really be nuanced about how you see your different audiences.
Mhm.
Moving to Europe gave the opportunity to not just have that a multicultural dimension, but really different countries,
Yeah.
where within countries you have these different subsegments,
Mhm.
and people can be neighbors but have a completely different history
Mhm.
and completely different way of seeing the world.
Mhm.
um, and so even so I was going to Switzerland a lot at the beginning for business because my
Mhm.
client was located there.
Mhm.
So every week I was going to Switzerland. And I would get cultural whiplash going between Paris and Switzerland because the two cultures could not be more different. Well, I think it could be more different, but it was quite different. I think the French have this, I don't know, like, I mean, I won't cliche. I won't be cliche about the French, but it's a bit more laissez-faire, the freedom and
Mhm.
self-expression, and the right to complain, and um, a strong sense of community as well are
Mhm.
really present here. But there's this celebration of the pleasures of life, which is fantastic, and which I hadn't really experienced to that point in
Mhm.
anywhere that I had lived. And then you get to Switzerland, and it's extremely reserved and conservative, and you can't make noise after 8 o'clock, and you can't turn on your washing machine on Sundays, and you can't cross the road not on a crosswalk. So I agree with you. I think that some of it is cliched, and it shouldn't
Mhm.
get to a point that's
Yeah. Generalized.
uncomfortably characterizing people.
Mhm.
But at the same time, there are rules and there are actual, I would say, artifacts that people are brought up with differently. So
Mhm.
even the thing of crossing the road on the crosswalk walk versus just randomly walking into the road like people do here,
Yeah.
it trains your brain in a certain way. And I think it has an impact on how you see the world and how you think. So I absolutely believe that where you grew up, where you're rooted in the different experiences you have, um, impact how you are, and
Mhm.
that country and language are one of the things. So yes, I agree. And I also, so funny, just read that they're creating robots that are
Mhm.
cultural robots that can pick up on things like cultural differences
Wow.
or tone of voice in the same way that humans can. I think they're a long, 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 long way off, but I was pretty taken aback by that because for me, it's one of the things, being able to pick up on that, sense that, adapt
Yeah.
accordingly. For me, is one of the things that is a deep, deep part of our humanity, and
Mhm.
that we absolutely have to keep sharpening and um, focusing on, spotlighting, because it's so human. It's so connected to who we are deep down.
I'm wondering if these things will make us lazier in like social contexts in the future because I'm thinking like, oh, since we don't have to do the math anymore, like we don't try to keep those skills and like language, I'm thinking the more we evolve in society and AI is going to be able to translate everything, I'm wondering will people learn language less and maybe on a date in the future they will be using their robots to be like, is he really happy about this right now? Like, so yeah, are we, maybe it's too sci-fi, too Black Mirror for now, but I loved how you said that it's our responsibility to improve our human relationships the more AI is developing. Like, can we develop around that a little bit? Like, you must be following everything that's happening with AI also within the industry. Like, what's inspiring versus scary to you right now?
I don't know if anything is totally scary, and maybe I'm naive for saying that. I think where I do start to get worried is if we were to give up um, the things that for me make us deeply human, and
Mm-hmm.
that are, I would say, the beautiful parts of
Mm-hmm.
humanity, as messy and imperfect and, I would say, maladroite
Mm-hmm.
as we can be. Those things, the mistakes that we make,
Mm-hmm.
the interactions that we have that are awkward or weird, those things are necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be very worried if we started to delegate too much of that. I'm all for delegating things to AI that we don't want to do
Yeah.
and that are technical and that help us become more efficient. Things like AI in healthcare for me
Mhm.
is a no brainer. Being able to accelerate how we develop innovative new medicine,
Yeah.
fantastic. Absolutely. But would you want to delegate the relationship between a doctor and a patient
Mhm.
to AI? No, because that care and that comfort and the interaction between two people, if we don't have that, then I wonder what we are as a
Yeah.
society anymore. And so I probably is a slippery slope because I'm sure eventually the AI will, the technology will be good enough to
Mhm.
mimic a lot of those things. But I think we have to remember that it's mimicking.
Yeah.
And when we do it, when we have an interaction, the interaction we're having now, it's completely original.
Mhm.
We, we are creating something between the two of us that didn't exist before. And we may learn things about each other. I think having this conversation will develop us in some way.
Mhm.
And while the AI is getting developed when we're giving it data, for me, it's not building someone. It's just going into the system and will generate another, I would say, generic response based on everything it's already heard before.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like
Um,
a calculator in a way, like
it's a
even.
calculator.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is. And I really believe that more and more of the things that we have done in the past and we've had to do will be delegated to
Mhm.
AI, and especially at work, but also in our personal lives, which we're already doing.
Mhm.
We need to sharpen and absolutely fight for some of the things that are human, that make us different, seeing the world through our five senses,
Mhm.
using those in our interactions, using them in our creativity, working together through disagreements or conflict,
Mhm.
um, which actually really help us learn and develop. And I
Mhm.
think workplaces should be kind of adult development centers. As bad as that sounds, we can rename that. We'll have to
Mhm.
rebrand that, but they should be opportunities for people, older people, to continue developing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, one of the kind of contracts that I see between a workplace and the people there.
Mhm.
Um, the individuals should feel like, as a group and as individuals, they're learning and
Yeah.
growing and continuing to learn and grow, because that's another thing that makes us human. We don't have all the answers like
Mhm.
a computer would have. We have to uncover them, and we have to, through uncovering them, learn more about ourselves and other
Mhm.
people. Because I think we understand about, most people don't understand themselves that much. And I think the distraction that we have with the computer that's in our pocket helps us do even less of that
Yeah.
digging and searching, which is
Mhm.
very uncomfortable. Um, and so I hope that we would hang on to that even harder,
Mhm.
because it's threatened.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think AI in itself is not what's scary. It's the fact that it might steal away the time we need to evolve, to
Hmm.
keep learning, to deepen our understandings. Because as I do also coaching on the side, I see a lot of people who delegate things to easier services and tools and stuff, and then they're consuming content a lot just to feel the emotions. So it can be our human part, but it can also be our addicted part.
Hmm.
And so, if we end up not having those deeper thoughts and the time to get bored, the time to feel, the time to learn, that's the issue. I think what gets me scared is sometimes when I listen to people like Yuval Noah Harari, who is like a brain that I really trust in and who's warning us about like, okay, we need to slow down. Or there was also, what was his name? He was chief happiness manager at Google. Uh, Mogadat, I think, who also was warning, who was like, we need to slow down. I was there when we made these tools. And so, yeah, sometimes I'm trying to tell myself maybe a little bit of fear is like good, just to keep an eye on the fact that we don't know where it might go. But I guess what you said is the most important. Like, we don't want the tool to do the things we want to do.
Yeah,
uh,
exactly. Just
yeah.
because it can,
Yeah.
you know?
And I also wanted to go back a little bit further in the past, like into your childhood a little bit. We've been talking about looking inwards. What kind of kid were you? Like, because I think the most humane part is also like what we like to do as a kid, what's fun to us, and it's like the basis of all this intelligence that you developed throughout the years. Like, what was fun to you when you were a kid?
As a kid, I was a complete bookworm. I
Mhm.
was always had my head in a book. I still love reading. I loved reading and I loved performing. So I was a drama geek, always in the
Oh.
school play, always singing, dancing, dressing up. I was, if I could wear a petticoat every day, I was obsessed with being in the olden days. So I would just love dressing in like period attire and pretending that I was in a story. I loved
Mhm.
Louisa May Alcott's Little Women. Don't know if you've ever
Okay.
read that book.
Mhm.
I must have read it about 15 times.
Oh.
And and yeah, just honestly, I guess there's a little bit of an escapism slash imaginary worlds thing going on because I could just fall into a book immediately. And there are some books that I almost regard as friends growing up. I
Mhm.
had some friends, but I would say I was much more. I surrounded myself by my books, and especially when we would make those moves, from the U.S. from the
Mhm.
U.K. to the U.S. We actually went back and forth a couple of times. You have
Yeah.
to remake your friend groups. So in those moments where I was kind of waiting to make real friendships, my books and the characters in the books and my imaginary games that I would play with my sisters or my friends or even myself
Mhm.
really, I would say, got me through those times and um, helped me travel without actually traveling and
Mhm.
experience different emotions. I feel like also a way to try out different things without in a very safe way.
Yeah.
So I'm a huge book proponent, reading champion
Yeah.
because I loved it so much as a kid.
And yeah, it's immersion and creativity and coping with what's going on in the
Yeah.
world. And
Mhm.
how does it compare now? You have two kids of your own. How are they girls, boys,
Two girls. Yeah.
two girls? And you
Stella
said
and
they're around
Alice.
7? They're
Stella is 8 and Alice is 7. So another, yeah, quite intense
yeah,
having them quite close together.
yeah.
But I've been trying to kind of not push reading on them, but just make
Mhm.
it a very present part of their lives. And now they're starting to read chapter books on their own, and it's so magical to see them
Mhm.
rediscovering a love of reading that I had myself, and
Yeah.
on their own terms. I also think it's one of the first ways you exert your independence by
Mhm.
falling into a book on your own, choosing the one you're going to read, staying up a little bit later than you're meant to, reading
Yeah.
under covers with the flashlight. I mean, I feel like those are kind of rites of passage that I'm super happy that they're having too. And
Mhm.
getting back to our conversation around technology, it's really difficult understanding how much time to give them in front of screens or to feel like you know, they need to learn coding at this age. We're really far behind. What should we do? But I'm trying not to freak out about it. I
Mhm.
think people pick up those things really quickly.
Yeah.
Whatever technology exists today will change in
Mhm.
2 or 3 years anyway. So trying to just focus them on reading for now and not too much on screens as much as
Yeah.
possible is what I'm trying to do because that's also how I grew up.
Mhm. And how do you, when you look at your kids and you imagine the future you'd like for them, and you had this moment in your life where you were questioning what job you're doing and everything, like, and today you're doing branding, and I've seen you use the word impact a lot on your content, also when you write on LinkedIn or other places. How do you put all these together? Like, how are you making sense of your world right now? Like, in terms of the meaning you give to the job you're doing.
That's a really good question. I mean, the way that I feel like I'm making an impact is mostly through the work that I do with organizations. I think
Mhm.
everything that we do is great, and I
Mhm.
think design deserves to play an important role in everyone's lives because I think it makes life better,
Mhm.
easier, nicer as well.
Mhm.
But it also has a kind of actual utility. In organizations, I think again, people are spending so much time there. I
Mhm.
think brand can have a real impact on people's lives within organizations
Mhm.
and can actually help the business. And hopefully, the business is bringing something of
Mhm.
value into the world that align with my values. And we actually talk about that a lot at the company,
Mhm.
what kind of companies we want to work with, what's aligned with the values of the organization and our own individual values,
Mhm.
what's not. So I try to make sure that the things that I'm working on are things that I really believe in.
Mhm.
And as an agency, that that's the kind of thing that we're pitching for and going for.
Mhm.
Then at home, um, I think the girls are only don't really understand what I do yet, but
Mhm.
we're just trying to start to have conversations about what's real and what's not real, or what's
Mhm.
true and what's not true. Um, because they're starting to see advertising for the first time. And even if I've worked in that environment, they need to be approaching the world with a critical eye.
Mhm.
And so for me right now, the things that I'm trying to do are just give them a basis of healthy criticism.
Mhm.
So not believing everything, not trying to ruin their innocence because it's a slippery, that's hard as well,
Mhm.
but also trying to have them ask questions and trust their gut as much as possible.
Mhm.
I think the thing that we haven't talked about as well is climate, and trying to
Mhm.
have those conversations is really hard too because children see things for what they are. And so
Yeah.
when you give them some of the facts that we maybe have heard so many times that it becomes not scary or not
Yeah.
shocking to us anymore, when you tell a child, they're rightfully shocked
Yeah.
that the earth is too hot or that coral is dying or that oceans are polluted. They're
Mhm.
rightfully shocked. And so sometimes you feel like quitting everything and going to join Greenpeace, to be
Yeah.
honest. But at the same time, I tell myself I have to make money for my family and
Mhm.
also use my own talents because
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily good at everything.
Yeah.
So, what can I do that's within my power, my small
Mhm.
sphere of influence? Because all of us only have a little shred, I would
Yeah.
say. What can I do? And for me, it's about helping my team develop,
Mhm.
helping the small amount of people that I work with, and then within organizations, trying to help them go in the right direction. That's not only right for them. A lot of them have goals that are bigger than just their company, and it's about
Mhm.
bringing value to communities and to the world,
Yeah.
and helping them tell that story and try to do the right thing as much as I can. Again, while knowing that I'm just one small piece in this puzzle.
Yeah, of course. And change also needs to happen from within the structures, like from within the
Of
industries
course.
that need to change. So if we
Hmm.
all go to monastère, like, I don't know, we're not all going to be contributing as much, I guess.
Yeah,
But yeah, and you were saying, how much time do we have left? I also wanted to hear if you have a few more minutes. You were
sure.
saying that you work pro bono sometimes also. Like, do you have a
Hmm.
case study you could share, like something that you really enjoyed working on for that type of project?
I'm trying to think. Honestly,
Yeah.
some of the ones we've worked on as an agency that have been quite cool have been
Mhm.
things like it's an organization called Cœur de Forêt. It's a
Mhm.
French association that is trying to protect trees
Mhm.
and forests.
Mhm.
And what we'll do, for example, is an exchange of competency. So
Mhm.
we will help them with their brand platform or with their logo,
Mhm.
and they will come in and train everyone in the organization around forests. So there was
Mhm.
a walk through the forest where we heard lots of information about why forests and
Mhm.
trees are important to our world, which you think you know, but not in detail,
Mhm.
and what's at risk. So it's just, again, other ways to bring in expertise and knowledge that we would have never got.
Yeah.
We also worked with Bibliothèques Sans Frontières,
Mhm.
so libraries without borders that bring kind of temporary modular libraries to
Mhm.
war zones, to places impacted by natural disasters. And with them, again, it was incredible
Mhm.
learning more about their mission and helping them find ways to sharpen what they're about so they can get better
Mm.
about what they're doing and
Yeah.
really spread even more around the world.
That's a very you project, right?
I
There's
know.
news, there
Honestly,
are books.
sometimes we're like, I wish I could only do that, but
Mhm.
no, we're at any time we're working on at least
Yeah.
one pro bono.
Yeah. But also, I mean, what you just said goes with the awards in the ad industry. Like most of the awards are often these types of projects.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're left thinking, are we like cause washing our own industry, like giving only awards to these types of things? Because um, I guess it's not easy. Like all the websites of ad agencies are not always up to date, and you want to see like what's going on. And in terms of like branding, where do you get your news about who's doing new cool projects of branding? Because I've been digging deep. I found only just like a few. I have some like bookmarks of that page of a specific magazine where they do
Mm-hmm.
branding news. But like, did you find cool medium for that?
I try every morning to look at lots of different things. So I don't just subscribe to branding.
Yeah,
We So Fast Company is one of the ones I go
yeah,
to that's global. Some of the industry publications like Stratégie in France or Campaign or
mhm,
Adweek. But another thing that my team does, we just did it yesterday morning, once a month,
mhm,
is What's Hot. So what we
okay,
do is we regroup
mhm,
at least I think like 10 to 15 pieces of
mhm,
news that has some connection to branding, has some
mhm.
connection to what we do. We also invite a designer to come and have do a designer eye piece,
Yeah.
and we have a moment with the whole agency. It's one of our rituals where we have
Mhm,
breakfast and
mhm,
we go through news by news, and it's the younger members of my team that do it. So it's also a great
mhm.
opportunity for them to present in front of
Yeah.
a group of people,
Mhm.
and we all look at it together and we discuss, and it's the
Yeah.
whole team. So we have
Mhm.
designers, we have production, we have strat, we have
Mhm.
business directors. So they're all looking at it from their own perspective and also bringing their own personal
Yeah.
point of view to it, and it's a great moment to discuss. So I also get some great exposure through that, and again, yeah, just picking things up, trying to also consume a bit of culture.
Yeah.
um,
Mhm. Yeah,
we
I
also
meant
try to
to
do Oh,
sorry.
go ahead.
I meant to ask you what's your favorite museum in Paris also?
Ooh, that's not easy. Um, Honestly, it depends what you're in the mood for,
Yeah.
but I really like the Picasso Museum, of course,
Mhm.
the Rodin Museum,
Mhm.
sculpture, obviously, l'Orangerie, where
Mhm.
you can go and sit with water lilies. It's
Mhm.
amazing. The Fondation Louis Vuitton is awesome. It's
Mhm.
obviously a rotating,
Yeah.
it's rotating exposition, but it's just fantastic. The last um, exposition, gosh, this word exhibition,
Yeah.
exhibition that I went to was the Rothko
Mhm.
exposition, and I did it on my own. And there was a soundtrack that you could listen to by Philip Glass as you went through, and it was really magical. It was really transportative. So no, you can't pick a favorite museum in Paris. That would be too difficult. I
Yeah.
mean, the whole city is inspirational and beautiful and magical and feels like you're walking through a museum.
Yeah.
So that answer for me. So, but yeah, there
Yeah,
you go.
diversity is the Ayurveda of museums. Let's have a bit of everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. I'm happy we're finishing on this also because I think when you're listening to the truths of people, helping them express their identities, the role of an agency is also to bring these inspirations and colors and things that maybe the company is not in touch with, but could really empower the feeling behind what they're doing. Because um, all the layers like typography, design, photography that there is in branding, I guess, are fed with people like you who are going out and like gathering all those pieces of magic and putting them on the table. Is there anything you would like to say maybe before we end our session? Like anything about identity, the world, like anything you'd like to come back on?
No, I think, well, I could just say that the work to really discover who you are is the work of a lifetime, but it's worth every single person doing that and trying to bring it to the table,
Mhm.
because it's what makes us human, and it's what makes us creative, and what helps us work together, and what really contributes to the magic of human interaction. So I guess that's how I would end it.
Thank you. That was lovely. Well, I was so happy to have this hour with you. I already love this episode, and I can't wait to share it with everyone. Well, thank you, and looking forward to getting in touch again.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Well, take care and see you soon. Bye.
Bye.